On October 30th, 2011, Blake Taylor contacted the authorities to report his wife, Isla Taylor, missing after returning home from a Halloween party the night before. According to Blake, Isla had come home, tucked their daughter, Rebecca, into bed, and slept with her for the night. However, when Blake woke up the next morning, Isla was nowhere to be found. As the investigation began, police discovered Isla's abandoned white 2004 Nissan Murano on the side of Millsfield Highway, approximately a quarter-mile from the Taylor family home. The car had a flat tire caused by a rusty screw embedded in it. At first, investigators found no signs of foul play in the vehicle or at the Taylor residence. However, suspicions quickly began to mount around Blake Taylor. Isla Taylor was a 44-year-old mother of 4 living in Dyersburg, Tennessee. Known for her cheerful and hardworking nature, she balanced multiple jobs, including house cleaning and working as an aerobics instructor, to help provide for her family. Her friends described her as a devoted and selfless individual who often put the needs of others ahead of her own. Despite her efforts to maintain stability for her children, Isla's marriage to Blake was fraught with tension and conflict. Isla and Blake's relationship had a troubled history, marked by infidelity on both sides. Blake had previously engaged in an affair that resulted in the birth of another child. Although the couple reconciled after the incident, the trust between them remained fragile and strained. By September 2011, Isla had decided to file for divorce, citing ongoing issues in their marriage. This decision came just 3 weeks before her disappearance and marked a significant turning point in their relationship. Isla's desire for independence and her decision to seek divorce reportedly caused tensions to escalate at home. Blake, feeling threatened by Isla's newfound autonomy, reportedly reacted negatively to her decision. In the weeks leading up to Isla's disappearance, tensions in the Taylor household reached a boiling point. On October 29, 2011, Blake Taylor made a sudden and significant decision to move his family from Arkansas to Dyersburg, Tennessee. The move was abrupt and reportedly done without Isla's prior knowledge or consultation. Blake had secured a position in manufacturing management in Dyersburg and had purchased a new home for the family. The rushed nature of the move left their eldest son, Chance, behind in Arkansas to complete the school year. This decision to separate the family during such a critical time raised questions about Blake's motivations and intentions. Isla saw the new home for the first time while helping to unload their belongings, a moment that added to the complexity of her situation. As the family settled into their new environment, Isla worked to adapt despite the hasty transition. She quickly found ways to earn money by cleaning houses and teaching aerobics classes. However, during this period, Blake's controlling behavior became more apparent. Friends observed that he was uncomfortable with Isla working outside the home, which added to the growing tensions between them. Blake's behavior reportedly became increasingly erratic as he struggled with feelings of jealousy and insecurity regarding Isla's independence. Friends of Isla noted that Blake began stalking her during outings and confronting her about her interactions with others. He frequently called her while she was out with friends and often appeared uninvited, leading to serious confrontations. This pattern of controlling and possessive behavior set the stage for the events that would unfold in the days to come. In the early morning hours of October 30th, 2011, Blake contacted law enforcement to report Isla missing, expressing concern for her well-being. His call initiated a formal investigation into her disappearance. The police immediately began gathering information about Isla's last known activities and interactions. At approximately 3 p.m. that same day, officers discovered Isla's abandoned vehicle on Millsfield Highway, just a short distance from the Taylor home. The vehicle's flat tire, caused by the rusty screw, was the only notable issue with the car. Upon inspection, police found no signs of foul play or a struggle inside the vehicle. However, Isla's keys and purse were missing. Forensic testing revealed no evidence of blood or any indications of violence. While the discovery of the abandoned car raised more questions, it failed to provide any concrete leads about Isla's whereabouts. Back at home, Blake claimed that he had last seen Isla around 2 a.m. on October 30th, when she returned home with their daughter, Rebecca, after a Halloween party. According to Blake, Isla had picked Rebecca up from a friend's house before returning home. Blake stated that after Isla and Rebecca went to bed, He briefly checked on their daughter to ensure she was safe before heading upstairs to sleep. He told police that he had no knowledge of Isla's plans for the night and expressed confusion about her sudden disappearance. As investigators delved deeper into Isla's disappearance, witnesses began to shed light on the troubled dynamics of her marriage to Blake Taylor. Friends of Isla came forward to describe Blake's controlling behavior, his possessiveness, and his frequent confrontations with Isla. They recounted instances where Blake had called or followed Isla while she was out with friends, often resulting in arguments. These testimonies painted a troubling picture of a marriage filled with jealousy, control, and escalating tension. Detectives took note of these accounts as they worked to piece together the timeline leading up to Isla's disappearance. The controlling and possessive behaviors described by witnesses raised concerns about Isla's safety and Blake's potential involvement. While Blake continued to assert his innocence and confusion over the events, his behavior and the troubled nature of their marriage placed him under increasing scrutiny in the investigation. In the days following Isla Taylor's disappearance, Blake Taylor appeared to cooperate with law enforcement, offering his assistance in finding any trace of his missing wife. When he arrived at the local police station, he was notably using crutches, claiming he had re-injured his knee, which had been operated on a few months earlier. The timing of his injury, coinciding with Isla's disappearance, raised suspicions, as it seemed too coincidental given the troubled state of their marriage. On December 10, 2011, a major breakthrough occurred in the investigation. Human remains were discovered in a cemetery less than 3 miles from the Taylor family home. The discovery was made by 2 individuals, Scott Smith and Soren Copeland, who were visiting the cemetery when they stumbled upon the remains. Law enforcement was immediately notified, and investigators secured the area. Forensic analysis later confirmed that the remains belonged to Isla Taylor. An autopsy revealed that Isla had suffered blunt force trauma to the head, and her death was classified as a homicide. The medical examiner concluded that the injury would have been fatal if Isla had been alive at the time of the trauma. However, due to the time that had passed since her disappearance, determining the exact circumstances of her death proved challenging. Investigators noted that there were no signs indicating that the murder had occurred at the cemetery. Instead, it appeared that Isla's body had been moved there post-mortem. The discovery of Isla's remains shifted the investigation from a missing person case to a homicide investigation, and renewed focus on Blake Taylor as a suspect. The nature of Isla's injuries and the location of her body raised critical questions about Blake's potential involvement in her death. Investigators began to scrutinize his actions and statements more closely, searching for evidence that could link him to the crime. During the investigation, authorities uncovered that Isla had obtained a second cell phone, which she used to avoid being monitored by Blake. This phone was kept secret from him, suggesting that Isla sought privacy amid their troubled relationship. Blake claimed he was unaware of the second phone, but investigators discovered that the number was programmed into his work phone, raising suspicions about his knowledge of Isla's actions. In interviews with investigators, Blake appeared more focused on Isla's behavior than on expressing concern for her well-being. Detective Jaden noted that Blake's preoccupation with Isla's alleged drinking and partying habits suggested he might be hiding something. Despite these observations, investigators struggled to find physical or eyewitness evidence directly linking Blake to Isla's murder, causing the case to stall. In the months following Isla's disappearance, Blake relocated to Alabama and remarried. He remained involved in raising their daughter, Rebecca, but provided no new leads in the case. Rebecca, growing older, expressed a desire to understand what had happened to her mother, but felt increasingly hopeless about finding answers. Authorities also examined Blake's claims about Isla's behavior after their move to Dyersburg. He suggested that Isla had changed due to new friendships, particularly with Clayton and Annabelle Craig. Investigators scrutinized this narrative to determine its relevance to her disappearance. From December 16th to December 20th, 2011, forensic examinations were conducted at both the Taylor home and Isla's vehicle. Investigators found no signs of foul play in the house, but noted some disarray in Isla's bedroom. They also discovered 7 gallons of bleach in the home, which Blake claimed were for cleaning purposes related to a dog poisoning incident involving a neighbor. As the investigation continued into January 2012, Law enforcement made public appeals for information regarding Isla's disappearance and death. They sought witnesses who might have seen her or had knowledge of her last known whereabouts. Despite these efforts, the lack of concrete evidence against Blake hindered progress in the case. While authorities pursued various leads and gathered testimonies pointing toward Blake's potential involvement, they ultimately fell short of obtaining definitive proof. For years, the investigation remained open as authorities continued to seek justice for Isla Taylor. Then on August 8, 2022, Blake Taylor was charged with first-degree premeditated murder in connection to Isla's death. This marked a significant development in a case that had remained unsolved for over a decade. The arrest shocked the community and Isla's family, who had spent years grappling with uncertainty about her disappearance. Isla's daughter, Rebecca Taylor, expressed confusion and distress over her father's arrest. After enduring years of investigation without a clear suspect, Rebecca found it difficult to process the sudden change in circumstances. "I was trying to figure out why," she remarked, highlighting the emotional turmoil that accompanied the news of her father's charges. The arrest also stunned the Dyersburg community, which had followed the case closely for more than 10 years. Residents often discussed the case, frustrated by the lack of progress and answers. When authorities finally announced Blake's arrest, it brought a mix of shock and relief to those who had long awaited justice for Isla. Michael Hudson, the prosecutor at the time, believed that previous investigators had struggled to bring the case to a decisive verdict due to an inadequate approach. He stated that earlier personnel had been waiting for a supposed key piece of evidence to prove Blake's guilt. However, Goodman and his team discovered that such a piece of evidence didn't exist. During the COVID-19 pandemic, when much of the world came to a halt, prosecutors used the time to review approximately 30 large bins of files related to Isla's murder. Goodman noted that they never found a single piece of evidence that definitively proved Blake's guilt. Instead, they pieced together a puzzle that revealed a clear motive. Goodman explained that Blake had likely felt he was losing control over Isla. Throughout their relationship, Blake had been able to control nearly every aspect of Isla's life, including her actions and whereabouts. However, as Isla began to assert her independence, going out for drinks, socializing, and pursuing a divorce, Blake's frustration grew. This loss of control, combined with the impending divorce, reportedly pushed him to plot Isla's murder. The prosecution's theory suggested that the murder took place inside the Taylor family home, and that Blake staged a series of events to make it appear as though Isla's death was an accident. Led on October 30, 2011, Isla Taylor picked up her daughter Rebecca after receiving a call from her. Both of them returned home and fell asleep beside each other in the same bed. From here, Blake Taylor allegedly moved Rebecca into a different room before proceeding with his intentions. Prosecutors theorized that Blake dragged Isla to the garage and violently stomped on her head, killing her. To make the murder appear as the result of an abduction, Blake allegedly loaded Isla's body into her car, drove to a nearby cemetery, and dumped her body, covering it up to stage the scene. In the days following Isla's death, Blake willingly approached the authorities, offering his help in finding his wife's killer. Prosecutors pointed out that Blake arrived at the police station on crutches, emphasizing his apparent inability to commit the crime due to a knee injury he claimed to have re-injured after undergoing surgery earlier that year. This detail was presented as an attempt to deflect suspicion and portray himself as physically incapable of carrying out the murder. The prosecution also refuted the possibility that Isla had left on her own and was abducted afterward. They highlighted several inconsistencies with this theory. For Isla to have been abducted, she would have needed to leave the house willingly. However, there was no evidence suggesting Isla had plans to meet anyone that night. Additionally, if Isla had intended to leave, why would she have moved Rebecca to another room and taken a sleeping aid like Benadryl before supposedly going out? Toxicology reports showed that Isla had ingested the sleep aid before going to bed, which contradicted the idea that she had plans to leave the house. To build their case, the prosecution relied heavily on circumstantial evidence. They pointed out that Isla's secret phone, which was unknown to Blake, had no activity after she returned home with Rebecca. However, forensic analysis revealed that the phone was used later, with a call to its voicemail made at 9:55 a.m. on October 30th. By that time, Isla was already missing, and the only adult at home was Blake. This detail raised suspicions that Blake had accessed the phone after Isla's disappearance. The prosecution also brought forward testimony from a neighbor who stated that Blake had helped move hay bales weighing approximately 60 pounds without using crutches. This testimony contradicted Blake's claims of being physically impaired at the time of the murder. The prosecution argued that Blake's use of crutches was an act designed to garner sympathy and mislead investigators about his ability to commit the crime. Despite the prosecution's circumstantial theory backed by these details, the defense pushed back strongly against the allegations. Blake's lawyer, Kean Willis, argued that the state's claims were speculative and lacked physical evidence. He asserted that the case against Blake hinged on the narrative that he was a controlling husband, but Taylor reframed Blake as a concerned partner who was worried about his wife's behavior. The defense highlighted details about Isla's lifestyle that emerged during the trial. Testimonies revealed that Isla had been involved in heavy drinking, partying, and, allegedly, a sex ring. One neighbor testified that Isla had been found passed out naked on their sofa during a party, prompting Blake to be called to pick her up. These revelations were used by the defense to challenge the prosecution's portrayal of Isla as a victim of control and to suggest that her personal choices could explain her disappearance. Taylor also questioned the state's theory about Isla's death. He argued that if Isla had been stomped on the head in the garage, there would have been evidence of blood or other forensic traces in the garage or the car. However, no such evidence was ever found. The defense also pointed out inconsistencies in the medical examiner's findings. The examiner, who initially determined that Isla had been killed by blunt force trauma to the head, later stated that she no longer believed Isla had been stomped on the head. The defense also challenged the prosecution's narrative about Blake staging the murder as an abduction. Taylor argued that there was no evidence to prove Blake left the house that night. He further claimed that Blake's physical limitations made it impossible for him to carry out the murder. According to the testimony of Blake's physical therapist, Blake had difficulty walking and lifting due to his knee injury, making it improbable that he could have dragged Isla's body or stomped on her head. The bleach found at the Taylor home was another point of contention. The prosecution suggested that Blake had used bleach to clean up the murder scene. However, Taylor argued that the bleach was unrelated to the crime, explaining that it was used to clean the pool, which was routinely bleached during that time of year. Rebecca Taylor, Isla and Blake's daughter, also testified in support of her father. She stated that it was Isla, not Blake, who moved her to another room that night. Rebecca claimed she recognized her mother by her touch and was certain it was Isla who moved her. Rebecca also expressed her belief that her father's knee injury alone was enough to disprove the prosecution's claims. She described her mother as an athletic woman and insisted her father, in his physical condition, would not have been able to overpower her. The defense also cast doubt on the prosecution's argument that Blake accessed Isla's secret phone. They suggested it was possible that Isla had simply forgotten the phone at home, and any alleged connection between the phone and Blake was speculative. They further argued that Blake's attempts to contact the phone could have been motivated by concern for Isla's whereabouts. The defense's strongest argument was the absence of physical evidence tying Blake to Isla's murder. Investigators had found no incriminating evidence in the house, the car, or on Blake's person. Additionally, there was no murder weapon, leading the prosecution to theorize that Blake had used his foot to kill Isla, a claim the defense argued was implausible given his physical limitations. Throughout the trial, the defense also suggested that political motivations played a role in the charges against Blake. They argued that the sheriff and district attorney, both facing re-election, felt pressured to pursue the case despite the lack of direct evidence. When the jury returned from deliberations, they delivered an unexpected outcome. Blake Taylor was found not guilty of first-degree and second-degree murder, as well as attempted first-degree and second-degree murder. However, the jury remained deadlocked on the charge of voluntary manslaughter, ultimately informing the judge that they could not reach a unanimous verdict. This indecision led to a mistrial in June 2024. Following the mistrial, new developments emerged in Blake Taylor's case. His ex-wife, Simone Blackburn, came forward with allegations that Blake had stalked her. During an appearance on 2020, Simone revealed that she had met Blake on a dating site 3 years after Isla's death, and the two had married in 2016. She alleged that Blake had exhibited stalking behavior during their marriage, adding another layer of complexity to his case. In October 2024, the Tennessee Court of Appeals denied a motion from Blake's legal team to dismiss the voluntary manslaughter charge in Isla's case. Blake pleaded not guilty to this charge, which will be revisited in a new trial. Blake Taylor remains in custody, awaiting trial on the voluntary manslaughter charge while also facing separate stalking charges brought by his ex-wife in Alabama. The complexities of these cases continue to unfold as all parties involved seek justice.
If this true crime story left you shocked and wanting more, don't forget to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think really led to the tragic end? Was it love, jealousy, or something more sinister? Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next gripping tale. Your support helps us bring more stories that keep you on the edge of your seat.